I'm Andrea McLean.
Hello, I am Mirela Sula.
And welcome to The Agenda, where we bring you issues from a female perspective by drawing together women from the world of business, from journalism and entertainment, to talk about any and everything that affect women.
From the current affairs to water cooler moments, each week we will bring panel discussions with candid conversations and thought-provoking discussion from women around the world.
So join us to hear the stories, the successes, and the opinions of women who dare to dream big. So today our conversation is all about the power of pivoting. And we're joined today by an incredible panel of women who at some point over their career has decided to change direction with at times some very unusual consequences. So today we are joined by Dr. Maggie Advice, who is an international holistic dentist and football coach, which I'm sure you'll agree is a very unusual combination. We're joined by Deborah Henderson, who is an ex-investor banker, founder and managing director at the Centre for Inspired Leadership. And we're also joined by Laura Hamilton, who's a TV presenter and entrepreneur. So welcome to all of you. It's so nice to have you here today.
Thank you.
I thought that Mirela, we could start with talking to Maggie about her unusual pivot. I think she wins most unusual pivot.
Well, as you know, as women, we always pivot. We pivot our life, we pivot our career, and it's always good. It's a bridge between the old and the new. And knowing you, Maggie, you are the perfect example of that. What was your why? Because there is always a breakthrough. There is always like a kind of calling, something that maybe it's coming from a dark moment, but you are so excited because you can see the light at the end of the tunnel. So how was that for you? Did you see that something amazing was coming, like a new birth, like a new reinvention, reprogramming, recreation? And this is how I see you in the journey. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, I think for me, first and foremost, thank you so much for having me. It's just a pleasure to just share this space with you incredible women today. I think for me, I would say circumstances pivoted me as opposed to me pivoting the situation. I started actually out in modelling quite young, and it just so happened that when it was time to think about a career, I looked at dentistry, but I knew that being dyslexic as a child, I wasn't going to get the grades to get into dental school, because to be a dentist in the UK, you've got to be ideally a straight A student. That wasn't going to happen. So I had to kind of pivot with my football gift into dental school, and I always saw that if I made it through dental school, I would give back to the footballing world, because the footballing world gave me the gift of dentistry. So
Can you explain why that is? Because was it a scholarship to get into university? Is that how it worked?
So in those days, I mean, I qualified 21 years ago almost, so it's a bit different today probably, but in my time, you had different programs set up by different universities, and because I was able to prove that I could play football for the university team, I was in a program where I had to play, 2-3 times a week, playing all the matches, playing the Booster League, and basically contribute to university life that way. So they let me in because they knew that, yes, I may well struggle with the course, but once I was on the course, I convinced them I would do well on the course. But I had to keep up with the course program alongside the football. So it was quite a difficult navigation in the first few years, but then I made it happen, and I did really well, and I finished. So that's how it happened.
And where did modelling feature in all of this?
So modelling was something I'd done from young anyway. So it was always just something that my parents had let me do for confidence, and the opportunity was there, and I enjoyed that. I could probably have done it as a career, but I'm the daughter of 2 professors, so that possibly wasn't going to be much convincing to let me do that as a career. It was a straight no. Find something else you want to do. Go to uni, and if you finish uni and you still want to be a model, then we'll have a talk. But they really wanted me to get a degree of some kind. That's just how it generally is if your parents are academics. I'm sure anyone here who's got parents who've been to uni will understand that. So that's how it happened. So I modelled up until about the 4th year of dental school, and then it gets a little bit more intense. You can't make those sort of 6-7 a.m. castings and make the 8:30 a.m. lectures, and so that's how my modelling kind of slowed down. And then I just carried on. But modelling taught me a lot. It taught me confidence. It taught me handling people. And these days, the beautiful thing about Instagram is a lot of the people I modelled with are still friends, and we follow each other. So it's good to see how their careers have pivoted as well. But yeah, I mean, I don't have any regrets from doing it. I really enjoyed it.
Well, it sounds everything happens for a reason. Yeah. Everything that we experience in the past, in fact, is creating a new opportunity to open a new door.
Yes.
And as I see, everything is connected, because everything that we have done is not a waste past.
Absolutely.
It's something that is helping us for the future.
Absolutely.
Laura, you are a celebrity in this world. You travel a lot, you pivot a lot, you recreate a lot. So it's, first of all, it's a great honor to have you with us, and coming from the experience of media and celebrity world. So how do you see the shift when someone is ready to, let's say, open arms and say, I'm going to take the risk? Because pivoting is a risk.
Yeah.
So how do you see it?
I mean, look, again, thanks for having me. It's great to be here. It's I've always been somebody that is I just say yes. Just say yes. And sometimes I don't even know if I can do what I'm saying yes to, but I'm like, I'll try and I'll make it happen. And sort of throughout my career, funnily enough, I grew up kind of wanting to be a dentist. And then at 15, I thought, actually, do you know what? I want to work in television. And my parents, who knew nothing really about media at all, said, Laura, whatever you do, it's always good to have another option, a backup. And it's interesting because I've listened to other podcasts where I've heard people say that when you want to achieve something, actually you shouldn't have a backup, because then you don't give it your all if you have a backup. But my parents said to me, it's really important that you have another thing on the side just in case it doesn't work out. And so I bought a property at 19, and I ended up getting a job working in television behind the scenes. So I did 4 years behind the scenes in television. But I bought my first property at 19. 3 months after I bought it, I actually lost my job. The channel that I was working for ended up going bust. And I thought, well, I'm left with this property and this mortgage, and I don't know now what I'm going to do. But I guess my pivot was, right, well, I'll let it out. I'll let it out. I'll see the good in this bad situation, and something will come of it. And I didn't quite realise at that time, buying that property and then saving for another property and having my TV career on the side, that I was having these two careers going alongside each other that one day I would eventually bring together to do what I'm doing now, which is presenting A Place in the Sun and property and travel. But as I've gone along that journey, I have most definitely had other pivots. I became a local postmistress 7 years ago and opened a local post office and created a coffee shop and a deli and a restaurant, and had 24 staff working for me, while still doing A Place in the Sun and having 2 children. And I loved that experience. And part of the reason for doing that was I felt like I'd had this career in television, still have this career in TV, and I want to give back. I want to give back to the community. I want to give local people jobs, and I wanted to create a destination in my community where, when properties were being sold, the destination that I created was going to be spoken about in the marketing material. And so I did that for 7 years and sold that 2 years ago, and all the while developing property on the side. And I'm always just, look, an opportunity comes up, say yes, because you don't know where it's going to lead to. Absolutely. I mean, look, I'm sat here now with you, meeting inspirational people, women, listening to other people's stories, and it's great. We never know where we're going to end up and what we're going to do, and it's just, I think, about embracing it.
You remind me, Richard Branson says, say yes, and then you think about it.
Yeah, 100%.
Andrea?
Definitely. And Deborah, I'm really interested on your take on this from the perspective of someone who you pivoted career after working for, was it 16 years in investment banking, because clearly you had a passion for what you were doing, but you felt that it wasn't necessarily being served in the best possible way in terms of the people who are working in it. So do you think, and it's interesting listening to all the different stories of the women here who have pivoted, do you think it's a uniquely female thing that we tend to see something that isn't working on a human level and we want to somehow see how we can fix it?
Wow, what a lovely question. I'm going to share just a few more details than I shared before about the pivot from investment banking to leadership coaching. At the time, that was my clear storyline as to why I was making the switch. And truthfully, when in investment banking, I was really glad to be working for one of the top firms, starting in New York and then coming to London, and very few women had been doing what I was doing at the time. But I got to a place where I thought, oh my goodness, I don't think I want my epitaph to say she was a jolly good stockbroker, and that's all. I couldn't feel in my heart of hearts that that's where I was making the difference that I was called to make. And maybe that's what you're referencing as a woman. I didn't have the courage of saying yes to moving at that time. The universe needed to help me out. And it was a painful helping out. It was a betrayal. I was getting married and it didn't work out, and I was in the middle of about to fly over to Denver, and I went, wow, okay. I guess I felt like this hand had stood in the air saying, I needed Mr. Right to come into your life to get you out of Morgan Stanley. And I needed you to be able to rethink your life. And so in that place of grief, I rethought, and I thought, I can't go back. I'm going to pivot. What role can I undertake from here? And basically, what do I love and what does the world need? Those are my two questions. And I thought, the world can find finance, the world can find marketing, but the world can't get good leadership and culture by snapping your fingers. And I decided that's what I would retrain to do. I had a passion for studying leadership, and I thought I'd far rather work with leaders to help them be who they might be rather than selling who they say they're going to be.
That's wonderful, and it's really interesting, I think, to hear, especially from a female entrepreneurial perspective, how many women pivot from pain. Because most women, when they move into either a different job space or even move geographically, it either comes from a position of seeing a need that they want to fulfill, or they're pivoting through pain, and then actually that's where they find joy, which you clearly have done because you love what you do.
I love what I do, but I will say it was, and I write in a book I'm writing, it's on the gift of pain, literally, of knowing, because we tend to avoid pain, but somewhere in pain is a gem. And when we actually reach deep down inside it, I think it's the universe giving us a wake-up call.
Yeah, it's always like that. Sometimes something from outside has to come and shake us, and we have to see ourselves in that dark zone to be able to say, hey, help, help. And most of the time we feel like, especially coming from the world of old culture, where we women, we don't seek for help. We are there all the time to help others. And then when we see ourselves into that corner, then we realize that we need to move, because nothing changes until something moves. And pivoting comes with some change, with some shift, with some move. And this is what you reminded me my story, because many times, as you said, Andrea, it comes from the pain. And when that pain becomes undoable, then you have to start bringing some change in your life. So, I mean, where do we get this conversation? It's like incredible. I would love to explore more with Laura. Is it anything that has come from your pain?
Do you know,
like, what is the biggest pain that really got you to a shift?
I'd say there's been moments in my life where different things have happened. I mean, I got married. I was married for 10 years. But if I'm truly honest with myself, I was unhappy for probably quite a bit longer, for a long amount of time. And I had a job, I still have that job, where I frequently went away. And I was escaping from my marriage at home, but loving my career. And I wasn't really accepting that I actually wasn't. It took me probably the pandemic until I was forced to be at home to really look inside myself and question, what is a marriage? Like, is this really what a marriage is? And it's terrible to say this, but my dad actually said, Laura, I gave your marriage 4 years. So I'm surprised that you got to 10. Now, I've never ever said that anywhere. But the reason why it got to, I guess it lasted as long as it did, because every other week I was going away. Now, that's not to say when I came back it was bad, but I was just running away from it and loving that life. And then, as I said, the pandemic made me really look inside myself and question, well, where am I going in the future? Is this what I want? Is this a real marriage, or am I just living in some
illusion?
And so it was a really difficult decision when the outside world thinks everything looks perfect, to kind of say, do you know what? I can't do this anymore. I can't live in this pretense, despite of how perfect it might look to the outside world. And I want to make a change. And I think a lot of people were surprised by the change that I was making, because no one really knows.
Because we're very good in hiding
what you're living. And I made that change, and it was difficult. And I think Andrea and I have spoken about this. And when you're the one that makes that decision, usually the other person does feel the same, but they might not have it within themselves to be able to think, right, I want this too, because it's scary. It's a scary thing. And, it's difficult. And then there'll be times in the future that I'm sure they look back and go, it was tough, but what you did was right. And so, that was a difficult point in my life. And I buried my head, I suppose, threw myself into work after it and renovated another house, and but very much enjoyed being on my own, actually, and thought, I don't need to be with anyone else. I'm happy, I've got my children. I felt in many ways, and I feel awful again saying this, that my wings were unclipped, and that then now I can go away and I can enjoy my job, and I can come back and be with my friends, and that's not to say that I have, I'm happy with the father of who my children is, but that wasn't my future, and so I decided to make that change.
First of all, can I just say you're really brave for saying those things, because there are many people, not just women, but just many people who are in circumstances, you've talked about it from a marriage perspective, sometimes it can be in a job perspective, where it's easier to stay, because actually the pivot in whatever form, whether it's in a relationship or a job, actually it's such a wrench, because there will be judgment from outside people who don't understand. There will be judged from, even Maggie picking up on what you said, from parents who don't understand that maybe this is a career choice that doesn't sit with values that I feel comfortable with, through no other reason other than I don't know any better. And then obviously Deborah had been forced into making a pivot through pain, but actually it's brought you to a place that it was hard and horrible, and there's shame involved in betrayal on both sides. But actually, when I look at all of us sitting here, the moment of pain that brought us to the pivot actually has taken us to an amazing place.
You know how I call this, Andrea? When we leave a dysfunctional relationship, or an abusive relationship, or a relationship that doesn't serve us, or is toxic, or is draining us, or when we leave a toxic job, or a place that doesn't nurture us, or something that is getting us stuck, and we get that action. It's called an action of love for yourself. It's an act of love for yourself. So this is how I would connect. I mean, now I know why we resonate so much, because this message needs to get out, because many people are stuck into their toxic relationship, any kind of relationship, with a job, with a family, with a marriage, with a place. Move. And as we usually say, if you're not happy where you are, just move. You're not a tree. So I'm very loving this conversation, and we could talk forever. But
we could, but we need to wrap up. But I thought before we go, if I just come down the line again, and if I ask you all, if you could give one piece of advice to anyone listening who is in a position where they feel like they need to make a pivot in some point in their life, what would your advice be? So I'll work my way down from Laura.
Just say yes. Do it.
Oh, the yes one.
You have to just say yes, and you don't have to know exactly what the result's going to be at the end, but you'll figure it out as you go along, and it's far better to say yes and say no and to be stuck and unhappy.
Maggie?
I would say that you're already in a situation, and so the worst thing that can happen is nothing. So if nothing changes, you're still going to be in the exact same situation, but the best thing that can happen is you're going to fly and escape the situation you're in. Very, very rarely will you put everything you can, your heart and soul, into getting out of a negative space into a positive space, and will you drop below the negative space you're in. I haven't seen many people land in the basement. So I think most people will either stay as they are and just trickle along stuck in the mud, as you kind of gave me the impression you were kind of stuck in the mud, or they'll fly. So just allow yourself that opportunity to fly would be my advice.
And Deborah?
And I would even, picking up from that, say we were meant to fly. I see us as spiritual beings living a human existence, and sometimes pain has to come along to help guide us on the right path that we might not have chosen otherwise. And when we can treat pain that way and go, oh, well, who am I to be sticking in this pain? Where am I called to go? The universe will open the doors. And I think we just need to trust that part.
And Mirela?
The universe will open the doors, and we have to trust. That means that do not worry. People worry so much what is going to happen. Because you know what, the truth is, many things that we worry about maybe will never happen. But let's suppose they will happen. If they happen, why do you want to worry now? Worry when it comes. And I guess it's not going to be that horrible as you think. That would be my message.
I love that. And mine would be, so often we're afraid to make a step in case we fall, but also going back to that beautiful poem that so many of us know, what if I fall, but also, oh my darling, what if I fly?
That's it.
I think that if we can live our life accepting that, do you know what, I'm gonna give it a go, I'm gonna run down this runway flapping as hard as I can, and I have no idea what's gonna happen, and I may take off for a little while, and I may be airborne, and then I may land on my face, but at least I tried. And can I just say, as we wrap up here, I've done all of those things. I've been airborne, I have soared up into the heavens, and then I have literally crashed and burned, landed on my face, and the way I see it is you pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and start all over again.
Absolutely.
You've all been wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us today, Laura, Maggie, and Deborah. It's been all right, hasn't it, Mirela?
Oh, it has been great to have all these conversations, as we call. It's candid conversation, and hopefully we have inspired some people out there.
I hope so. This has been The Agenda, and we hope to see you again soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.